All right, welcome to the Lovecraft eZine videocast and podcast. Today is September the 4th, 2016, and our guest today is Sam Cowan from Dim Shores. Hey, Sam.
Hey, everybody. How's it going?
Good. And I'm Mike Davis, Lovecraft eZine. Let's do introductions real quick, and then we will interrogate Sam. And we'll also talk about some controversial topics later on in an effort to boost ratings.
Cool. My favorite kind.
Yeah, if this goes well, it'll be my doing, of course, and if not, it was Kelly's idea.
All right.
No, we didn't get to the feminism thing last week, and then I had a couple of other thoughts about a few other things and whatever else you guys want to talk about. So, but first we'll talk to Sam. So let's start with Kelly and work our way over.
I'm Kelly Young. I am the Grand Poobah of Strange Eons magazine.
Hi, I'm Matt Carpenter, and I'm wearing a Cetus for Cthulhu t-shirt today.
Does that glow in the dark?
No, it doesn't. I glow, but...
Well, okay. Pete.
I'm Pete Rollick, and I'm wearing a R.J. McCready shirt.
Ooh.
Nice.
Wow, I'm just wearing a plain black t-shirt, and no one sent me the memo. Rick.
I'm Rick Lay, and I write new pulp fiction about pulp heroes.
What are you wearing?
More importantly.
Just a brown shirt.
Oh, man.
There's no political significance.
SP.
SP Miskowski, and my husband gave me this necklace.
What
I
is
love it.
What's
What
on
is
it?
It's he bought it at the convention where he's on a panel and doing a presentation this week. It's wings and some little ears. I'll tell you the artist's name and their website next time.
All right.
Forgot. All right.
Okay, so Sam, let's. Did I? Yeah, I didn't skip you, did I, Matt? Oh, wait, prizes. Yes, thank you. That's what you were going to say, isn't it? Dennis from Fedogan and Bremer has a couple of books to give away. Thanks, Dennis. Actually, we can probably do some of these next week as well. He's got several. Let's do this week. He's got 2 copies of Weirder Shadows over Innsmouth.
It's a really good book.
Yeah. So I'll give away 2 of those today, thanks to Fedogan and Bremer. And so there we go, prizes. I'll tell you how to win those later in the broadcast, and you can you've got through a week from today to win those, and today is September the 4th, 2016. So anyway, back to Sam. Sam, before we talk about Dim Shores, let's talk about you a bit. You've been around. I think I met you in 2013. Does that sound right? At Necronomicon?
2013. Yeah, that's right. In fact, you were one of the first people in this group that I met. You were asking for volunteers to help while people were on panels at Necronomicon for some vendors. I volunteered to help, and you hooked me up with Tom Lynch over at Miskatonic River Press. And I ended up being at his table an awful lot, and that's how I met almost everybody else that I know to this day, like in this community here. It was really cool.
So this is all my fault?
Well, yeah, I mean, in a way, yes. And just, seeing how involved everybody was at that first Necronomicon, thinking that maybe I could do something too, This looks like there's not a very super high entry-level bar. I could probably do something.
Wow, thank you. Appreciate that.
Oh, no, you know what I mean.
Like if these idiots can do it, anybody can do it.
Okay, maybe I should explain that one.
No, I liked the way it came out, actually.
With print on demand and all that, it was much easier to do something like this for me than having to print up, say, 1,000 in advance and pay for that all at once.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I came from with this. And although I should say I do print everything up at once. It's all one big print run. I order in advance, and I number everything and send them out.
Yeah, I was going to say because unlike myself and some other small publishers and self-publishers, you don't do print on demand.
Mm-mm.
What's your? I guess we kind of jumped ahead to Dim Shores, but I do want to get back to the weird fiction scene in a second. But
Sure.
um, when you publish a chapbook or a book, how many do you typically publish at a time?
It's 150 copies for sale.
Okay,
There's another 20 copies of each one that are presentation copies for the author and the artist and me, all that.
right. And each one of them are numbered?
They're all numbered. Sometimes they're signed if I happen to be around the people that are involved. Some of them have been, but they're all numbered. And I think the most I've ever done of anything, I did 200 copies of the paperback of Michael Sisko's Knife Dance book. But that's been like the biggest run of anything.
Right.
I was wondering, actually, okay, you came to the Necronomicon, but what was your background before that? Did you have any experience in editing, publication? Were you an author? What were you doing, and how did this lead to where we are?
Well, it is my day job is layout, print production, production art, that kind of stuff. And I love what I do. It's fun, but I just find most of the content, the stuff that I'm working on, is just a paid job, and that's fine. But I wanted to do something that's more in line with what I like. And I thought, well, that's the one thing I have to offer here. I'm not an author. I'm not an artist. I'm not a great editor. But I can do layout, and I can, put the money up front, which isn't a whole heck of a lot to get these things done. And it's just worked out real well. I've been very lucky.
So what was the genesis of Dim Shores then?
Yeah.
It's actually, you can kind of blame that a bit on what I said about Mike and Tom Lynch and meeting everybody at the first Necronomicon, and then going to the H.P. Lovecraft Film Festival up in Portland the next year. I got close to a bunch more people, and I decided I wanted to do a chapbook for Mike Griffin without him knowing about it. So I took everything that I could find from his that had been published online, copied the text, and made a 3-edition bootleg chapbook of like all of his stuff. And I gave one to him, and Justin Steele wrote the introduction, so he got one, and then I got one, and that's it. And it was so much fun. I really enjoyed doing it, and I thought, this is something, let's put some numbers together and see if it can work. And so far it has.
What was that chapbook for Mike Griffin?
Oh, it was just about 5 of his stories that were available at, online magazines and stuff like that I just stole. But yeah, it was fun, and he thankfully liked it, so that was great. But it was also called The Lure of Devouring Light after his story, which I think is a great story and a great title.
Yeah.
His book is wonderful, the one that's out now from Word Horde.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, he was on the show 3 or 4 weeks ago, something like that. Getting back to the weird fiction scene, are you saying 2013 was that was your first convention?
That was my second. I guess my first was in 2012. I went to World Horror Convention in Salt Lake City, and that was also cool. And I did meet a lot of neat people there that I kind of stayed in touch with afterwards. But it wasn't quite the same thing as the next year when I went to Necronomicon. The feeling wasn't the same. The crowd wasn't the same. It's still fun, but it's different. But yeah, that was like the first con that I went to, but I started to get to know these people through the Thomas Ligotti message boards.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I first met Mike and Joe Pulver and a ton of other people. And I kind of got into Ligotti by accident. I saw his book in a Orders once, Shadow at the Bottom of the World, which is kind of a hard one to find, I guess. It's an English book, I think. Cold Spring Press. I didn't know anything about it, but it sounded interesting. I bought it, and man, that was it. I totally got back into small press horror and weird fiction after that. It really drew me in.
I'm sure you're right about both conventions being fun, but what's the difference in your mind? Smaller feel or
It's hard to say. It's more of a portion of the whole horror audience. It's not such a broad thing. There isn't a lot of splatter stuff and things that you might see at World Horror Convention or Fear Fest or something like that. It just seemed to be more of the weird, more subtle fiction was there. That's where I first met Richard Gavin, Simon Francis, and a lot of guys that to this day are some of my favorite authors, and I think fit much more in with that scene than if they would over at the World Horror, which I'm sure they've been to too. But
yeah,
it didn't seem as congenial. I guess it was still fun. Everybody was nice, but it's just hard to put your finger on it.
more alcohol at Necronomicon possibly is the key.
No, that's one thing. It was in Salt Lake City, for God's sakes. Bars don't open until 5 in the afternoon at the hotel that's having the convention. I mean, it was kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, that's not a good thing, is it, Kelly?
I'm just
what are you
marveling
drinking
at the salad days of 2013 when everybody in this community got along.
Yeah, because we hadn't actually met each other yet.
Well, yeah, I do remember meeting Pete there. In fact, I think I remember Pete and Mike having sword fights with canes, as I recall.
Oh, yes.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
I'm glad you clarified that was with canes.
How much money is floating around in the community? They started fighting for it.
Yeah, I won that challenge. At least that's the way that I remember it.
Well, I had no Achilles tendon, so...
People always have an excuse when they lose. Yeah. So...
Well, what aspects of weird fiction do you like? Do you have some favorite authors? Not necessarily Lovecraftian, because I don't view the Dim Source publications as Lovecraftian per se.
Yeah, no, they haven't been. In fact, I have a policy, like one of the few that we do have is we don't want anything overtly not only Lovecraftian but almost anything that you could tag like that. It's okay to have mentions and influences and things like that, but I would not want to do like one of Pete's Reanimator pieces, which I do like. No, don't get me wrong, I do like that, but I think there's already like a good, healthy market for that stuff out there. There's a lot of outlets, that'll publish that, and some of the more subtle or odd stuff, might have a harder time getting out. And this is it's on a pretty small scale. So I just do things that I like and that appeal to me, and so far that's been sort of psychological, more of the, I don't like the term quiet horror, but it's been somewhat along those lines for some of the releases.
Are they always chapbooks?
They have been, except for the Knife Dance, the Cisco book that we did. That was Joe Pulver's baby. It was an old story that Cisco wrote back in the 90s that had just been hanging around for a long time, and Joe always wanted to publish it, so we did, with Cisco's blessing. And other than that, though, a lot of the stuff I've been getting lately is actually novella length. So I think the next 3 releases are all 100 pages or so.
What are those?
Let's see. Coming up next is going to be Grass. That's a book by Anya Martin. She's been in a number of anthologies so far, and she's great. That's going to be out. Actually, the pre-order for that opens tomorrow. And it'll probably be in my hands in about 2.5 weeks. And then after that, there's one called Yeti, Tiger, Dragon from Daniel Brahm. He's an author. His first collection came out in May from Cemetery Dance. And this is 3 stories that he wrote. They all have a sort of cryptozoological bent to them. And I'm from the time I could read, I've been reading about Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster and all that stuff, and I just could not resist doing this one. That should be out in the beginning of October. After that is the aforementioned Michael Griffin. I'm doing a novella of his called An Ideal Retreat. That should be out in November. And then after that will be Michael Wehunt, Gemma Files, and Giaprakash Lachimurthy. And that'll be up through like spring of next year, and that's all I currently have planned.
That's quite a bit, actually.
It's a lot. I try to do one a month, and I haven't really been hitting that. They've been kind of doing little spurts there. I think I would slow it down, go to one every 2 or 3 months. I think that that way I can put more time into each one, and I can actually see my wife once in a while and my cats and such.
Hey, Sam, wasn't that your original plan when I first spoke to you at CthulhuCon?
Mm-hmm.
I think you were talking about doing this quarterly, and then they just started rolling out really quickly.
Yeah, and that's kind of my own fault. I just knew so many people who had so much great stuff. I wanted to, let's do it, let's go, and I'm happy that I did, SP being one of them. It's been great. I always have one or two in reserve that are waiting to get the artwork done for, or something's waiting. But I try to do one a month as we can, but you can't always plan writing and artwork and stuff like that down to a day. So if it takes longer, it takes longer.
Do you have, as a publisher, do you have a particular reason? I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I hope it's not interpreted that way. For going the limited number of books, instead of.
Yeah.
Probably get that question a lot, I'm guessing.
Well, actually, no, I don't. But
okay.
there is a reason. It's probably kind of a dumb reason, but because I feel comfortable with it. I feel that way. I pay the author and I pay the artist one set fee because we know how many things we're going to sell. There's no royalties involved or anything like that. It's much easier for me, which is a really lame way of saying I'm lazy. And at some point, there is going to be non-limited stuff. There is going to be an anthology coming next year after all those other chapbooks I just mentioned, and that will be general, release, ISBN number for sale through all the web outlets, blah blah blah.
Yeah. Well, at almost one a month, I would say it's definitely not because you're lazy.
Well,
you've basically been funding this out of pocket. Have you been breaking even?
Yes, and that is the main thing. I told myself I can do this as long as we at least break even. I'm not in this to make the money, obviously, and I tend to make somewhere around $100 to $200 per book on paper, and that's if everything sells and everything goes exactly right. And there's usually replacement books and things get lost in the mail and whatnot, so it's probably a little bit less than that, but it's not negative, and that's the main thing. I'm able to justify it as a hobby still. It's a net positive. It's not really costing me anything.
Well, it's definitely not a lazy way to work. It's a very practical way to work. I've seen a lot of people try to do this and get really bogged down with the accounting and business side of it, and it just fails, and then they're miserable about that because they can't keep it going. It's a labor of love. So it's really important to tailor your publishing to what you can do and what you can do well.
Thank you. Yeah.
These are beautiful books. You've done a great job with every one of them. So
thank you.
Obviously, this is a system that works really well for you.
Well, one thing that helps is that they're all collaborative. Like I try to get the author and the artist and me. We all talk about what we're going to illustrate. How things should go, where the drawing should go, and I think that's why they turned out so well. Is I have people like you and Nick on Stag and Flight. That was wonderful. I was able to really get a lot from the interplay between you guys.
It's an odd story, and what you were saying before about publishing work that you like, and we may not be able to label it, we may not be able to say what kind of writing it is, but it strikes a chord with you. That's a great thing. Stag in Flight is a story that I really, really wanted to share. I wanted it to be out there in the world, but it's such an odd story. It really doesn't have a category, and I think working with Nick, he really elevated it. He did such beautiful work on it that it became a work of art. The book itself is a work of art. So that was just a great, wonderful experience.
Yeah, it was good. He even did an extra drawing for it that he didn't have to do. That was not part of the deal, but he wanted to do it, so he did.
Oh yeah, Nick's like that.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
So how do you choose your authors and artists?
Well, so far I've been pretty lucky that I've approached a number of authors and just asked them, hey, here's the terms. Are you interested in doing something? And a lot of people have said yes, much to my surprise. And then I've talked to a bunch of artists in advance. I kind of tell them what the terms are. Here's what I can pay for cover and interior art. And if they're okay with those terms, then I kind of put them on a list. And then when I get a story, I read it, and I think, okay, who do I know from my list that would be good for this? And then I ask the author, too. So, do you have anybody in mind that you would like to see do this? And that's actually led to some really good pairings that I wouldn't have otherwise done, that I wouldn't have known about.
And then once you've approached an author, have you ever gotten something back that you just didn't feel like that was the right thing? And if so, do you then say, send me something else, or are they like put to the back burner, or how does that work?
Oh boy, that's a good one. Actually, yes, and it was the very first one, which I felt incredibly arrogant. But when I decided I wanted to do this, the first one I was putting out for sale was the Jeffrey Thomas book, and I had met him at the Necronomicon 2013. We had a great time together. We kind of stayed in touch. Me and him and Justin Steele all kind of bonded one night over drinks at the bar. It was great. He's a really good guy. And when I told him that I wanted to do this press, he said, well, you can have one of mine to start with. And I was so impressed. Wow, start with Jeffrey Thomas. That's amazing. Great, let's do it. He sent me stories, and I said, they just don't have the right tone of what I was going for. It was stories that I think he's published since, part of his Elsewhere, Other Worlds stories, which are great, but they have a bit of humor to them. And I kind of wanted the very first thing I did, at least, to be just, dead serious. And I told him exactly what I wanted, and he wrote Ghost in Amber, and he sent that to me. And I kind of, A, couldn't believe that I was getting to work with him. B, couldn't believe that I told him no, I didn't want something that he sent me. And then he went ahead and wrote this thing that, to this day, that one, it's a devastating story. And that one I only did 100 of, so it's kind of harder to get than most of the others. But it is going to be in his new collection from, I believe, Lovecraft eZine Press, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, sometime in the next 6 or 8 months.
Good deal. That's a good one. So yeah, that was a case where I read something and I kind of went, oh, it's not exactly there. Most of the other stuff I've gotten, again, I've been very lucky. It's come in, I've read it, and I've been, wow, this sounds great, let's go. And once I had the initial tone kind of set, then I felt okay from going off of it a little bit. Having some things that are almost more fantasy, like the Knife Dance or the Nectar of Nightmares, or Cody's story, Free School, that is more of a kind of weird noir thing than a psychological horror or something.
Right.
So it's, yeah.
You obviously have a particular taste in story that you're looking for, and obviously this didn't start in 2013 either. What are some other authors that you've read when you were younger or before 2013? Let's put it that way. That you like, that you enjoy, that write this kind of story.
Well, again, it was Thomas Ligotti in about 2007 or so when I found that book, maybe 2008.
Right.
And that's what really drew me back in right now. Before that, when I was younger, one of the first horror books I can remember reading is Night Shift, Stephen King. I think that came out when I was 12, and my mom had it, so I read it. And there were a couple things in there that just scared the living hell out of me. I thought it was great, and that started me reading Stephen King. A few years later, Clive Barker, and then I kind of got more into fantasy for a while. Read a lot of Robert Howard and Fritz Leiber and stuff, but I also did read Lovecraft when I was 13, I think, in a collection somewhere from, Scholastic or one of those school things. I read one story, and I rode my bike like 8 miles down to the bookstore that I could nearest me, and I found that's when they had those Del Rey editions with the Michael Whelan covers, the paintings of skeletons and all kinds of stuff. They were great, and I asked somebody there about it, and she pointed me over to the books, and I bought them, and I read everything I get my hands on after that. I started going to used bookstores and getting all sorts of old anthologies, and reading all the old stuff. Clark Ashton Smith became a big favorite. So the classic stuff. I read some Peter Straub, not enough, but that was the main stuff.
How far out are you in terms of chapbooks or stories that you've accepted that you're going to publish, and what advice would you have if someone's listening to this or watching now or listening later, and they're a writer and they think that maybe the type of fiction they write might fit what you're looking for? What would you say to them? What's your advice? What should they do?
Okay, well, let's see. If you include Grass, sorry about the cat there, which comes out in a couple weeks, there's 6 more chapbooks that are currently planned. After that, the anthology should be out next summer. That's going to be a regular book. There'll be a hardcover edition and a regular paperback. Probably about 20 stories. Justin Steele and I are editing it. We've already sent out invitations. We expect to receive about 50 submissions, and of that we'll do about 20 of them. It's going to be hard. But that's about it. So that's through about next summer. After that, to be honest, I'm not entirely sure if I'm going to keep, we'll see. It may become like an annual anthology or something, like Shadows and Tall Trees did that very well.
Right.
I don't know. It kind of all depends.
Or Night Script, I guess you'd say, too.
Yeah, oh yeah, exactly. God, yes, I can't wait for the next one.
Yeah. Yeah. That first one was great.
CMO knows what he's doing.
What advice then would you have for other small publishers? You've been doing this for 3 years now. What have you learned, and what should they avoid, and what should they know?
That's kind of what's weird, is I didn't really do anything as Dim Shores until early last year. I mean, it's only been not even a year and a half yet since I started doing this stuff. And I don't know, it's kind of hard to say. One thing is to know how much things cost and build in an extra cushion on top of that for the stuff that you didn't plan on. There's always stuff you don't plan on. But just, I think what worked for me is just do what you like. Do what speaks to you, what your passion or niche or whatever happens to be. I hope anyway, with Dim Shores, I've done stuff that's tonally and just compositionally very different from each other, but it's all stuff that I like. That's the one thing it has in common. There's always going to be something probably a little dark about it. But other than that, the only thing you can say all these things have in common is that I like them. They speak to me.
You know, one of the things that surprised me as I became a publisher and a magazine and then a book publisher, that writers would occasionally say things to me like, "You're great, you pay your writers." It was really confusing to me at first because I'm like, well, yeah, we agreed to this. That, you know, this is, I'm paying you for the story. You're giving me the story to publish here. So it was surprising to me to hear that, you know, just because someone's a small press publisher doesn't mean that they're doing it right, and you're one of the ones who are doing it right. So.
Oh, and that's one of the things that, one of the reasons, like you were asking before, or how come it's limited editions and small runs, and because, again, I feel comfortable doing that. I don't have to try and sell as many copies as I can, and I kind of know what the audience is now. Everything that I have left in stock, except for the Night Dance, there's, 20 or less of them. I know how many people out there I can sell this to with the current effort that I put into marketing, which is basically Facebook posts. I don't know that part of the business still very well, so you can put that under the advice column too. If you want to do this, know more than I do about marketing.
Yeah, but you typically sell all of your books. I mean, I'm looking at your publication right now, and your website right now. Under the publications page, sold out, sold out, sold out. We need to sell more Stag and Flight, but you just did that one recently. So
yeah, well, no, that one's low too. Yeah.
So I mean, you're saying you're not a whiz at promotion, but obviously you're selling out of everything, so that's it's a good thing.
Yeah, and so it allows me to just, again, be, if you don't want to call it lazy, maybe unambitious, and just kind of do what I'm doing right now, advertise to people that I know will buy it, which I'm happy to do. Again, I feel this is more like just something that I do because I want it to be out there,
right?
Not because, really, honestly, any other reason.
Yeah, and it's people like you who are keeping weird fiction alive because you do it for that reason, and money's good too. I mean,
yeah, no, for sure. And I'm hoping with the anthology, I'm trying to fund everything up front so that I can pay the authors and the artists up front, what I promised, and then after that, for this one, there will be royalties and all that stuff. So that one I will try to sell a little harder. I probably will have to do stuff I don't do right now, which is okay. I can learn that.
Well, yeah, and learn. I mean, what you just said about learning, you keep talking about, you're using the words, being lazy here first couple of years, but really it sounds more like you're being smart, getting your feet wet, learning the business, and not taking on too much at the beginning while you do that. That's what it sounds like to me, which is a very smart way to do it. So.
Well, that sounds good.
You'll go with that, right?
I'll totally take that. Yeah. No, it's
a lot of the do-it-yourself philosophy behind this too. There's
that's very true.
And there's the do-it-yourself attitude, and that was something that that was very strong around the late 80s, early 90s, and then sort of got overrun by a lot of greed and ambition and a lot of people who overreached and overstepped, and everybody suddenly thought, well, I can be a millionaire, so I'm just going to go for the biggest and the best and the shiniest, and I'm going to be, and it's crazy. I mean, what is wrong with living a good life, living your life well with the people that you love, and treating people right, and doing the work that you love to do, and creating something new?
Right. Seriously, I feel incredibly lucky, really, to be able to do this, to have a job that pays me enough and allows me to have this kind of time for something as, that's not as necessary to my survival as this is. It's great.
Well, we're all paying ourselves handsome salaries for the publishing
Well,
that we
you
do.
are. Strange, yeah.
Hey, Sam,
Sure.
so you hooked me up recently and allowed me to complete my Dim Shores collection, but I actually wanted you to talk a little bit. I have something that's even more rare, which was the first Dim Shores book. I don't remember if it was actually called Dim Shores, but you did a Clark Ashton Smith chapbook.
Yeah, that was early 2015. I went to I think that year it wasn't the HP Lovecraft Film Festival, it was DuluCon or something.
Yeah, it was just CthulhuCon, yeah.
Yeah, up in Portland, and I knew I wanted to do the Dim Shores thing, so I figured I'd do a promo. I thought I had taken the name Dim Shores from a Clark Ashton Smith story. Um, so I thought, what better thing to do than do Clark Ashton Smith? And it's so old, it's got to be public domain, so it won't cost me anything. Great. And long story short, it is not. Some of his stuff is, and much like Lovecraft and a lot of other people, is sort of up in the air about what you can use and what you can't and who owns what. But there is a literary estate of Clark Ashton Smith that manages his affairs, and I got in touch with them thanks to Jared Walters at Centipede Press and Scott Connors, who's a Clark Ashton Smith expert. They put me in touch with the guy that handles all this stuff, and it only cost me $50 to license it for that chapbook because it was not for sale. They usually charge more than that for his stories, but if you meet, nice price. I think I only did 60 of them, so it didn't really cost that much to print. I brought them up with me and basically handed them out to people at the con. By the time I was done, they were almost all gone. But that was for like the little teaser thing to get people interested in it.
Well, it certainly worked because I remember Rick Tillman and I driving back home looking at these and going, this is a pretty nice calling card to say this is what I plan on doing here shortly.
Well, it's...
And he's no good at promotion, he says.
Well, I was going to say, Rick is also one of those guys early on. Rick Tillman and Dennis, who you mentioned before, from Fedogan and Bremer, who gave me a lot of good, just nuts and bolts information, paper, printing, that kind of stuff. They're extremely helpful. I owe Rick, actually.
Yeah, don't you just love that, Sam? Guys like Dennis or Rick, and there are others, quite a few others who, they're publishers, but they didn't look at you as, okay, here's more competition. I better not help this guy. They 180 degrees the other way. They wanted to help as much as they could.
That's absolutely true, and that is the one thing I have to say that I did see at that one World Horror Con I went to, 2012. I was there with another small press, and I walked around meeting all these people that I think at the time it was basically through MySpace. I think it was still then, or whatever.
It was a while ago.
Yeah, but these are all people that I just knew online, and I did get. That was the first time I met like Ross Lockhart and Ellen Dafoe real quick.
Right.
But I met all these other people, and shoot, I lost the point. I'm sorry. What were they talking about?
I thought you were leading to it wasn't like that at that particular.
Oh yeah. No, I'm sorry. No, it actually was like that. It was.
Oh, it was good.
Very much like that. I had a badge saying I'm with some other press, and everybody that I talked to there, no matter who they were extremely open. Anything I asked, they would answer. I'd ask about how many things they sold. They would tell me. I just kind of couldn't believe how cool everybody was. I come from the medical devices and high-tech background, and there is, cutthroat. People don't say anything to anybody from other places. And it was so nice to see that support and camaraderie. And I also saw that at Necronomicon, too, with Rick, and not just Rick and Dennis, but a number of people. It was great.
But I do know what you mean. I mean, every single time I've asked Kelly Young for advice on publishing, he tells me to take a hike. He's not sharing any of this.
That's right. It's all proprietary secrets.
I have another kind of question about your business model.
Sure.
You originally in spite of pleading and begging, you were not going to do any subscription.
Right?
Because it was just too much extra time or logistics on your part, I believe. But you caved, which is...
I totally did.
Peer
Enough.
pressure.
Well, enough people asked about it, including Matt. But actually, the reason I didn't want to do it up front, it wasn't so much I didn't want the extra work. It's a little bit of extra work, but not much. I just have to enter the orders for everybody that subscribes into my web store. I didn't want to do it because it was a commitment. I'd be saying to people, I promise now that I'll put out these next books that I certainly plan to put out, but now you've already paid me in advance. And at first, I didn't want that hanging over me, just in case I screw everything up or something. But then enough of people asked about it. They were selling out consistently, so I figured, sure, why not?
So I missed that. There is a subscription rate available now?
No,
Well, no. It's basically
there's not. Take a hike.
You pay the same as you would, for getting them individually, but you can just do it all at once and not have to worry about you must pre-order between these dates before anybody else can grab your number or whatever.
that was my big deal. Was
Yeah.
I was completely disorganized, and I was worried I was going to miss a number.
Yeah, because with Dim Shores, typically when the books are sold out, they're sold out. So I can see why you'd want to subscribe. How does that work? What do people need to do, Sam?
Yeah.
Just basically email me. That's all. There isn't any way to do it, through the website or anything. Basically, you just PayPal me the money, cross your fingers and hope.
And it looks like they can email you from dimshores.com under contact.
Yeah, I'm just Sam at dimshores.com. I mean, or you can use a contact form on the website or the Facebook page or whatever.
Okay.
Okay, now another question that is probably going to put you on the spot a little bit, and you probably can't answer. Do you have a favorite book you've put out so far, or a favorite piece of
Oh, man.
Oh, you trying to get this guy in trouble, man?
Yes, I am.
That is a tough one. I can't, it's hard to say. One of the things I was saying before about how they're all sort of different from each other, I feel differently about some of them. If I think about the top of my head, I think of books like Rangel and Free School that I just viscerally enjoy. They're fun to read. I get a little charge from reading them, and it's great. And then there's other stuff like, Ghost and Amber or Stag and Flight or something like that are just devastating. They're emotionally, when you're done
They're
reading it. Well, yeah, you do not walk away, feeling great about life, but they're powerful. It's good stuff, and so it's hard to say. I'm not going to choose a favorite, but
well, it is a bit of apples and oranges.
Well, I just like each one in their own way. There isn't anything that I would put out that I didn't absolutely love, and in fact, I won't review my own stuff on Goodreads or whatever. I mean, you can just assume it's an automatic 5-star. I wouldn't be doing it.
Right. Yeah, I forgot till now you stole that Matthew Bartlett story from me, didn't you? No, that's not actually exactly how it happened. Well, he sent that to me a long time ago, and then it was before I got Matt and Alex to help me. So I was taking a while. I sent him a note saying, please forgive me, I'm going to get to this, but he wanted to change some things in the story. I don't think he was quite satisfied with it. So, and then he sent it to you, and I'm really pleased at how it turned out. It's a really lovely-looking chapbook.
Well, and
a great story.
Thank you very much, and it is a great story. And that one actually was picked for Year's Best Weird Fiction Volume 3, which, that was the second thing that I put out, and it was not picked for that because of what I did. It was picked for that because of Matt's story. It would have probably been picked if it was in your thing too. But I have to admit, I felt pretty good about that.
You should.
That was nice.
And the whole press, you're doing a wonderful job, Sam.
Well, thank you. I'm trying. It's so much fun. I have not done anything else that I can think of in the last 20 plus years, that I enjoy putting this much energy into.
Okay, so do you have like a projection for like what's going on for the next year, or how far in advance you plan?
Well, right now we're out through about next summer with the next 6 chapbooks in the anthology. That will go through. That'll probably come out. I'm going to say August. I don't really know. I'm saying summer, but we're supposed to get all the submissions by the end of the year, and I figure it's going to take a little while to read them all, decide what we're going to do. Other than that, I'm not entirely sure. There are a few other things I haven't mentioned that I've been talking to people about doing that would come out around these other releases. I don't ever want to do more than one in a month. I did that once, and it was not only hard for me, but it was hard for people buying them. That's the other thing about putting these out every month is there are people that collect these, and it's kind of hard for them every single month to buy a book, and I totally get that.
Yeah, how much is the typical chapbook? Is there a set price, or is each one different, Sam?
No, I've kind of settled on $8 for a shorter chapbook and $11 for the longer novella-length ones. It's the same shipping rate, which it does actually cost more to ship the bigger books, but that way I'm still able to pay the authors and the artists what I think is fair and not lose any money.
Yeah. Well, that's super reasonable too, because you're not just buying a book; you are buying a collectible because of the fact that you have made them all limited runs.
Well, and every single one except for Ghosts and Amber has had a cover art print come with it, and I plan to keep doing that. One of the things about Dim Shores is I wanted to get the art to be a major part of the whole experience. And so that's why we do the prints and why the artists are actually paid as much as the authors are. It's just as important to the overall thing. But I hope to keep doing that. I don't know that I'll do a lot more stickers. The one that we did for Stag and Flight is awesome.
That's a great
but the one that I did for the preschool Cody story, that was printed with a whole other process, and they fade real quick if they're outside, as I found out the hard way. So I don't know if I'm going to do a whole lot more of those, but there'll always be like something besides the book. There's the artwork, and then you get a print of the artwork or something. It's what I would like to get if I was buying it. So I figured,
even the mailing envelope comes with the printing image on it. It's really cool when I get that in the mail, because I get a lot of chapbooks and various things. But when yours shows up, it's always very easy to see. Oh, I got a Dim Shores book, cool.
I don't even throw the envelope away.
Right.
Save the envelope.
Yes, well, thank you, Day Job, and your color laser printer.
Well, Grass by Anya Martin is coming up. Can you talk a little bit just about what the story is about without spoilers, or would you rather not?
Yeah, no, I can say a bit. I just kind of put everything up. It has a order page on the website now with a little synopsis of it. Basically, it's about a woman who her divorced husband dies in a plane crash in a swamp. She has to go ID his body, and she's not happy about it. And things take a very odd turn from there. There's swamp monsters, there's weird surreal dream stuff, there's sex and death and all kinds of strange stuff. It's not really gothic or noir, but it reminded me a bit of like if Swamp Thing was on Showtime and it was a lot more pervy or something, maybe. But it's a lot more than that. That's not a very good way to put it. But it's a really good story. Anya, I've only read her stuff that I've been able to get in anthologies. I haven't read anything else. I really liked it. And this story really got me. I don't know, like everything else that I've done, it has a hook, some particular thing that I identify with. I really liked it. I did not ask her to change anything at all about it except for like minor line edits or typos or whatever. It was
Right.
great.
What's the-
Did you
What is
go ahead,
the
SP? I'm sorry.
Sam? When is that book? When is it coming out?
Yeah.
Let's see. She is reviewing the final proof right now. Once she okays that, which ought to be in the next couple days, I'm going to order the print run. That takes about 2 weeks to get into my hands. And then after that, I'll start fulfilling orders and stuff. But it actually goes up for pre-order tomorrow for people who bought the last chapbook, and then
Okay, great,
Friday for everybody else.
great.
Okay, so at most, if on Friday they can pre-order
Yes.
Grass by Anya Martin,
hmm
if they would like to. Again, for the audience, that's dimshores.com.
Thank you. Yeah, that's true. And
Writers, so everyone should jump on this and pre-order.
she's good. And that is one thing that I do too. Is everything that I do, people who bought the last one get first shot at the next book. So there are about 43 people at this point that have every single book the same number of each one. So they, whoever bought the last one gets first dibs on the next one to make sure you can still get your same number if you want. That's how we do this.
That's
scripted
pretty
and all that.
cool.
Yeah, you know what? Subterranean Press, they put out those 3 Thomas Ligotti books, the definitive editions.
Yeah.
And they came out like a year apart from each other. And I ordered them from them, and every single time I did, they sent me the same number. And I thought that was so great. As a book nerd, all the numbers are the same. I was very happy, so I wanted to do that for other people.
Well, do we have any more questions for Sam, guys? Anybody else?
I don't know if it's a question, but I am really looking forward to this Anya Martin book. I got to meet her a couple of years ago at the Lovecraft Film Festival. We sat down and chatted, and she was very complimentary to Strange Eons. And then as we started talking, I realized that she worked with Kevin Eastman during the heavy metal days. And I just started fawning over her and begging for stories, and she was telling me about the rock star life of working with heavy metal in the 90s. So I'm really looking forward to this. I think she's a cool person, and I think she's a great writer.
No, she is, and in fact, she was out here. I got to see her and Scott Nicolay 2 weeks ago, I guess, which is cool because I don't ever get to see any of you folks outside of conventions and stuff. So it's always nice when someone's in the area, or
Yeah, I know you live on the West Coast somewhere, but where do you live, Sam?
I'm just right outside of Sacramento. Northern California. We're about 2.5 hours from the coast, about 2.5 hours from Lake Tahoe.
Yeah.
Yeah, not a bad place.
Speaking of conventions, do you have any coming up that you will be at?
I do plan to be at the next Necronomicon next year in Providence. Other than that, at this point, no, I don't. And if I am at conventions, I will probably not be vending, at least not officially. It's not so much that I don't like to do it. It's really fun, but I miss everything. I miss all the panels. I miss the readings, and that's kind of why I want to go to these things. So.
You're not going to go to the HPL Film Festival, what is it, next month? No?
Yeah, up in
It's
Portland.
not too far from you, is it? I mean, I don't know what a drive that is, but
It's like a 9-hour drive. It's totally doable.
yeah.
But it's more about work and
Yeah.
budget and all that stuff. And yeah, I probably won't do that. There's some other things we have to do this year that take priority.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know what you're talking about. I go down to these with Rick Tillman, and Rick will not miss a thing, which means I sit behind the table the entire time. So if you're there to see some of the cool stuff, you can't be vending.
Yeah, but as we all know, the best parts of the con are not the panels and the readings. They're afterwards, after everything stops. And that you can still do when you're vending. So
That's true. That's where all the deals are made, or in the bar.
Well, that's
Yeah.
where the amazing, ridiculous things happen. I mean, I don't know.
Of course, Young usually has some whiskey under the table when he's vending. I think
It's not even under the table. It's right there.
that's. I was trying to be nice, but yeah.
Hey, if you buy anything from me, I'll give you a shot.
I remember I saw you on a panel. I think it was in Portland, and you just came and you sat down and you took your bottle out and plunked it right down in your glass, and that's how we started the panel.
I generally bring a glass for everybody if I'm on a panel with them. That's
Which is
how
very
I
nice.
get on panels.
And then you sneak me into the moonshine, and
Well, the HPL Film Festival recently in San Pedro. Did you bring the whiskey down there? And we were drinking out of. I thought that was you.
That
No, I mean
was
Kelly.
not me.
I thought that was Kelly.
No,
No.
I think that was.
Or was it
you know
Griffin?
what? I think it was Griffin. I think it was
Yeah.
Griffin.
Yeah, I think it was
I
Mike
think it was
Griffin, yeah.
No, I did have some in Portland last time. I had the little bottle in the backpack, but this time I'm pretty sure it was Griffin.
Was this in San Pedro?
Yeah.
Yes.
No,
was it San
I
Pedro?
gave that to y'all.
Oh, that was you. Okay, thank you, Matt.
Read the skits, because some wanted y'all to embarrass yourselves.
Oh, that was you, Matt?
that was a good night.
That was from Top Shelf stuff too, if I remember.
Glenlivet, I think. Yeah.
18-year-old.
Ooh.
Well, Sam, thanks for being on the show. I really, I have to say, I really admire you and what you're doing, and also admire the fact that, why you're doing it. I can't emphasize enough that small press and people like you are what keeps weird fiction alive. You know, you're publishing stories that often find it's hard to they have a very hard time getting into mainstream publishing. You know, so yeah, thank you. It's a good thing
Thank
that
you
you're doing.
guys. It was really good. It was good to see everybody. I haven't seen people like Matt and Pete and everything since the last time I was in Providence, so it's nice to see everybody almost face to face.
Yeah, that's kind of how this whole thing started. Actually, I got a note from email from somebody. I think it was Rick Seam. I think that's how you pronounce his last name. He's either a listener or a viewer, or both, I guess, if he's a viewer. You wanted to know how this all started, and it was as simple as that. What you just said, Sam, was like, once a year or whatever isn't enough to see everybody, so maybe I can see a few people once a week.
Yeah, for
So.
sure.
Yeah, you got to be regretting that now.
Well, I am now, yeah. But just over the last couple of months, I've been regretting it. So.
Right on. Well, thank you guys very much.
Yeah, thank you, Sam.
Yeah,
Good work. We can't wait to see what comes next.
well,
Yeah.
thank you all. It's been great. I appreciate it. I am going to head out now. I got to go to some family
All right.
stuff. But I will talk to you all soon, I hope.
Thanks.
See
All
you
you gotta
later,
do is
Sam.
close your browser. It'll kick you right out.
All right, man. Thanks.
Thanks, man. Good to see you. So pre-orders for Martin begin tomorrow if you've bought books at Dim Shores previously, and if you haven't, just go to dimshores.com on Friday, and you can buy that. Sounds like a great story. So.
Yeah.
Also, if you go to dimshores.com, go to the publications page. They're almost out. What Sam said, he's getting low on copies of Stag and Flight, but they do have a few left. So you might want to buy them because every book Sam's published is sold out. So.
Yeah, and that is a cool story, SP. It is hard to kind of to figure out what you would call that, but I dug it. It was very strange.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Well. Like I said, it's hard to imagine, a category for it. So
Yeah.
Sam took a chance. He took a chance on it and did a beautiful job. I mean, the book itself is beautiful. Nick Gus's art, Matthew Revert's design for the cover, and it just turned out beautifully. So.
And as someone who deals with mild anxiety every once in a while, there were a few things that I was reading and going, uh-oh, maybe I need to get back to a therapist.
Maybe
You
you
left your
shouldn't have quit.
therapist? Jeez.
Maybe you shouldn't have quit. That's really what you should be thinking.
I didn't quit. She kicked me
I don't
out.
know. I don't know if the book
Oh,
is. I don't think the book is much of a recommendation for therapy, but
I think, well, the issue becomes self-medication, but that's another problem. Anyway, I thought the story was really disturbing, and I very much enjoyed it.
thank you, thank you.
all right. So I've got a few things I'd like to talk about, but I know last week we ran out of time to talk about this article at Wired and this writer. God, I'm not going to say her name right again. Is it Kaj Johnson? And the title of the article is Spinning Lovecraft into a Feminist Dream Quest. As I said last week, I posted a link to this at the Lovecraft eZine Facebook page, and with the request that people please be civil. And actually most were, even though there was some disagreement. I did have to ban a few people. But, you know, you saw, I think, SP, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you had some things you wanted to say about it when you saw the comments last week. Is that right?
Well, I found it interesting that several people were very put off by the feminist point of view in the interview. And what I had to say about that was that I think the author was just talking about the ideological underpinnings of the work. She wasn't really describing the work itself. You know, because I downloaded a sample and I was reading it. This is not an overtly political work. It doesn't read like a feminist rant or a screed. You know, it's just funny how that can sometimes just saying that something has a feminist point of view can automatically turn a lot of people off and make them think that it's going to be a political rant.
Yeah.
So I think that maybe the interview didn't excuse me, maybe the interview didn't entirely represent the writing, the book. So yeah, and the other thing that I found interesting was that there was only one main comment. I mean, aside from the little nested comments, there was only one comment posted when I looked at it that was written by a woman. So
Yeah.
it's sort of the problem is self-evident. You know, getting more women interested and involved is maybe, you know, the whole issue. But I don't think there's anything bad about feeling possessive of work that you love. I just think that if you feel so possessive of it that you try to exclude other people and prevent them from expressing their view and their take on it, then problem. It's great if you want to express your views, if you want to say, you know, these are the ideas that I have about this work or about this writer. That's great. You can do that, and you can be successful at doing that. But if you're going to try and prevent other people from expressing their response to the same work, you're just going to fail. Your cause is doomed. I mean, it doesn't matter how much you talk about it. You're not going to succeed in preventing other people from having their own take on it. So I don't think that there's anything wrong with any of the views that were being expressed. It's just that you need more people exploring the same work and expressing their views. That's all.
Yeah, I noticed a couple of comments, and I'm going by memory now because it's been a couple of weeks, but that were along the lines of, you know, stuff like this is destroying Lovecraft's work, and I've never understood that those comments like that and feelings like that, because it doesn't matter what you write based on, you know, Lovecraft stories or cosmic horror or hell, Star Wars. It could be whatever. You're writing fan fiction that nobody else is going to see. It doesn't change the original work, no matter what you do.
Right. He's still right there on the shelf.
Yeah.
You know, anybody can read Lovecraft, and that's great. I just think that, like I said, the possessiveness and the love of the work and the desire to express your own ideas about the work, there's nothing wrong with any of that. There's nothing wrong with saying, I was here first and I really love this and here's what I have to say. But if you're going to try to exclude anybody else or prevent anybody else from doing that, you're just not going to be successful at doing that.
Well, isn't it art, and shouldn't we all be getting something personal out of it anyway?
Yes.
Hopefully, yeah.
Can I just say, just not that Lovecraft is Shakespeare, but if you look at Shakespeare, it's almost like every generation or so has to reinvent Shakespeare to one degree or another. So you get Akira Kurosawa doing Macbeth as the Throne of Blood. You get I don't know who it was, Richard III done in like set almost like in Germany, where Richard III is like a German officer or officer in the war.
Yeah, that was excellent.
Titus Andronicus. It's like, or what was it? Nathan Fillion was in it. There was a
Much Ado About Nothing.
Yeah, Much Ado About Nothing, and it's very different than the Kenneth Branagh version. And I guess if you don't really like the version that you're reading, well, that's fine, but you can't stop the next generation from exploring it and trying to relate to this work.
Right.
I guess I don't. If they say something that I think is kind of preposterous, or they come up with a bunch of stories that I think are lousy, I just won't read them. I won't support them. I won't buy them. But I'm not going to try and tell anybody they can't write what they want.
Well, this gets into kind of this internet culture that we're into now, where, especially with the geeks, and I say that lovingly as a geek, but the pop culture stuff, you know, a remake of Ghostbusters with women gets just, you know, it's
destroying my childhood.
Exactly. It's the worst thing on the planet. Now, I saw the movie and I didn't think it was very good, but it had nothing to do with anything other than, you know, story-wise, I didn't like it. And also, I was not a huge fan of the original Ghostbusters, but if I were, it's still there to watch.
Yeah, that's it. You're off the show.
But
I'm a fan of the original Ghostbusters.
My point being that this new age we're in allows a lot of people to say really horrible things at the drop of a hat without thinking about them and without thinking about the ramifications of what they've said.
And not having to suffer any ramifications.
Yeah, and there's no consequences typically.
Yeah, the approach is too personal. You know, you didn't like Ghostbusters, so you say that you don't like Ghostbusters and tell everybody you know you don't like Ghostbusters. Why post racist, ugly things about one of the stars on Twitter?
Yeah, that's just...
You know, that's not going to get you what you want. It's not going to make Ghostbusters remake not exist.
Well, and when that happens, I wonder, what do they want when they do something?
What are they trying to get here when they're like getting this Tempest in a Teapot echo chamber where they're all just sort of piling on and saying bad things to each other? What do you think they're trying to do?
You know, it's funny that Sarah Silverman had this story that she told about being on Howard Stern's show, and right at the end of someone had called in, and right at the end of the phone conversation, just before they cut off the caller, he sort of shouted out, "I exist!" And she thought that was so sort of strange and poignant. Sometimes people just feel that they're not heard anywhere. That people don't take them seriously. Maybe people don't listen to them at work. Maybe people don't listen to them at school. But by God, they can make their voice heard online. And like I said, if you want to actually say something that has some substance to it, if you want to express your view, that's great. But going after people is not going to accomplish anything. It doesn't prove anything, and it doesn't accomplish anything. It's better to just state your views. But for some people, that just doesn't feel like enough. They don't have a large enough platform or a large enough forum. Not enough people listen and respond or say, "Oh, you're right."
Yeah. Well, I'd like to move on, but before I do, I'd like to ask you and anyone else who wants to chime in about the. You said something like this a few minutes ago, that the word feminist or feminism seems to be this word that makes a lot of people angry, a lot of guys angry. And I'm not sure why. Do you feel that the actual word feminism, to me, it seems like it's becoming a word that means different things to different people. And so it's almost, in some ways, becoming meaningless because this group of people thinks it means one thing and that group of people thinks it means another. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that's true. I think it's too bad that we don't have. Maybe we need new terminology. The word's been interpreted in different ways for a long, long time, and so that's not something new. But it still triggers all sorts of emotional responses. People attach too many things to it. I don't know what else you can say about that point of view, but it's true that it triggers in some people. They immediately expect a Valerie Solanas whoever phrase that word.
You just broke up. What was that?
I said it just automatically triggers in a lot of people expect that whatever you're going to say is going to be strident and unreasonable, and that you're somehow on a crusade.
Yeah.
So I don't know what to do. I mean, I don't know how to address that. I mean, there are women I know who won't call themselves feminists, and then there are women I know who proudly say, "Sure, I'm a feminist." I think it just means too many things to too many people, and it's an automatic trigger for a lot of people.
Yeah, an actress, I think it was an actress, recently said, "No, I'm not a feminist. I believe in that men and women should be treated equally," or words to that effect. And immediately a lot of people said, "Well, that is what feminism is."
Mm-hmm.
So it does seem to mean different things to different people, and seems to be a very charged word. But yeah. So anyway,
Can I say something, Mike?
yes, please, Rick. Go ahead.
Just, I haven't read the book that Ms. Johnson wrote here, but if everybody's upset that in the interview she said that Lovecraft had two-dimensional female characters, that has been a comment that goes back to the first Lovecraft fanzine that I encountered in 1970. Lynn Carter wrote it in his study of the Cthulhu mythos. I think L. Sprague de Camp said something similar.
Yeah, it's true.
I mean, I don't know. Men have been saying this for decades, and nobody's gotten upset.
That's a good point. But a woman says it, and suddenly, the world goes nuts. So I don't know.
Well, there are expectations, social expectations still, that somehow women will provide, I don't know, sympathy, that women will be more kind, sympathetic, helpful. I mean, all of these things that we we say we don't expect these things of women, but we do. I mean, I find sometimes online that I will make a completely neutral comment, and someone will have their feelings hurt because of that, because I didn't do a winky face emoticon after it, or I didn't sugarcoat it.
What do you mean by that, SP?
Yeah, what are you trying to say, damn it?
Hey, SP, can I assume that all these men that you're talking about who don't expect women to, these are all men who've never been married, right?
I don't know. I don't know. Marriage is intimate compromise. So maybe it's a youthful thing. I don't know. I really don't know. But I think no, it's not a youthful thing. That's crazy, because I know a lot of really young men who are feminists and who are very supportive of my work and the work of other women I know. So it's just, I think maybe feminism is a banner that we need to look beyond, or people need to maybe look past it when they see it and try to understand what the person is really getting at. Because like I said, the sample that I read from this book by Johnson is not an overtly feminist or overtly political story.
Okay. On to the next topic. I read, I will not name names, but I am going to quote something. He, omitting the person's name, this is from a public blog entry, so I'm not talking out of school here, can take comfort in the fact that upon his own demise, he will not suffer a similar fate, for he will be so utterly forgotten that no one could take the trouble to engage in such puerile desecration. When he dies, it will be as if he had never lived. I've seen this insult from this same person several times, and the go-to insult seems to be, no one's going to remember you 100 years from now, or, you're not going to matter after you've died. And I started thinking about that, and the thought occurred to me that, is that really why we should be? Is that a good motivation for doing what we're doing? Writing or editing or publishing, or creating in any way, or doing anything. Being a school teacher or a whatever. Is that a good reason for doing it? I personally don't think it is.
It isn't the reason I write.
Yeah. Again, speaking just personally, the reason why I do this in anything associated with Lovecraft eZine, writing or whatever, is a couple of main reasons. I enjoy it, number one. Like Sam was talking about, that's why he's doing it. And I am starting to make some money at it, not very much, but that's another reason too. I don't understand. I guess I just don't understand why that should be our motivation. The example that always leaps to my mind is my wife. She's a hell of a school teacher, and she touches a hell of a lot of lives. And a good teacher, a really good teacher, because there are some bad ones, will touch hundreds of lives, and those lives will in turn touch hundreds more, all for the better. But let's be coldly logical here for a second. Is anyone going to remember my wife's name 100 years from now? Possibly, but likely not. Does that mean what she's doing is somehow less important than somebody else's that may be remembered? Well, obviously not. So I don't understand the insult. I don't understand where it's coming from. And
well, apparently it's. I mean, I would guess it's coming from someone who thinks that is important, that immortality, or or that there are works that are immortal. There are works that stand the time, that that are important because of that, I
Well,
guess.
and also that insult kind of takes its roots back 1,000 years ago when you would kill your enemies and their blood would nourish nothing. But you're basically saying that their life means nothing.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a little antiquated to throw out an insult like that now. But I don't know. There's a lot of self-importance in this community we're in.
Well, I do think, especially when you've said it more than once, it says a lot more about the person doing the insulting than the person that they're trying to insult. And I know in this particular case, this person has children, so I would imagine it matters very much that this person has lived, if for no other reason, and I'm sure there'll be other reasons. So, you're basically saying you don't matter and you're never going to matter, and strikes me as very immature. Um, I don't know. Maybe I like people like Sam. His motivation is he enjoys doing this, and he wants to give back to the community. He wants to get this kind of fiction out there. I like those sort of motivations.
Yeah, and at the Lovecraft Film Festival in San Pedro, I sat with Sam and Gwen and Brian and John Skip and a couple other people, and I sat next to Sam. And besides thinking he was maybe the sweetest human being I had ever met, I just left that night thinking, boy, that guy runs deep. He's got a lot of stuff going on in his head, and he's just he's a good human being. I think it's interesting that you say that was a immature insult. Yeah, of course it was, and the response was immature to something else that was said that was very immature.
Right.
We
Yeah,
hamstrung
we're in high
ourselves by
school.
not naming names, but yeah, exactly. We are coming out of people in their 50s and 60s are acting like they're 15 and 16 still.
I just look. Maybe Danielle tells me I expect too much of humanity sometimes, but maybe we don't expect enough of ourselves in many ways. What we were just talking about with people who went nuts over the feminist word, and these insults going back and forth. Maybe we should do better.
There were people who didn't go nuts over the feminist word. I mean,
Yeah, true.
There were a lot of people in that discussion thread who said very thoughtful things. And like I said, I mean, all of them, except one comment, as far as I can tell, all of them were comments from men. So there were very thoughtful comments too. And, there
True.
were a few people who were angry and upset, and they felt that feminism was not something that should enter into this discussion. And, they expressed themselves and expressed their views. But there were more people who were willing to at least take a look at the work and see what it was like. And so I think you have to look to people like that, and you have to look to people like Sam, who treat other people with respect and understanding and listen. So I get upset when I see people trashing one another online, and I have to, excuse me, remind myself of my friends on Facebook and the people that I've met in the horror writing community who are incredibly supportive and helpful. So many people have been really, really good to me. And there's absolutely no reason why they should be. They don't have to be. Laird Barron didn't have to be nice to me. He didn't have to pass my book along to other people, then, took a look at it and considered it for a Shirley Jackson Award. He didn't have to do anything. He was already on his way to becoming, so well known that, I mean, I would, seem like nothing in comparison. And yet he took the time, and he was very thoughtful and very helpful. And he continues to be thoughtful and helpful. And you guys, when someone comes on your show, you don't try to show them up. You don't try to make them, explain themselves. You're very welcoming. And I find that by and large in this community, that most people are welcoming. So it hurts when people are mean and when they're crazy. It's scary, but you have to remember the people who are welcoming and are very helpful when they don't even have to be.
I have a question, SP. On that feminist thread, did you make a comment at all?
No.
And I think that's the majority of us. The people who make the comments, you know, who are speaking the loudest, there's something going on in their head, and they've got to get down and write something furious. And then the few people who combat them
Yeah.
are just so, you know, upset over what has been said. But the majority of us don't really think that much of it, and we, you know, we're the silent majority. We sit back and just read this, and you know, we all might go, wow, these people are screwed up, but very few of us do anything about it. I don't know about you guys, but it takes a lot to move my needle. If my life is a Richter scale, I mean, it barely goes off every once in a while, and it's usually something to do with family or friends that gets it to move.
I just don't want to get involved. It's just too much effort. There's too much outrage over everything, as near as I can tell. There's a very, it's all part and parcel of our uncompromising society and lack of political compromise at the highest levels. It's like, I find the easiest way to avoid the outrage is to
Avoid it.
not participate. So I'm not on Twitter, you know. I often click right by the lengthy, painful discussions on Facebook. You know, so a lot of what you're talking about, I didn't even bother reading the thread. You know what I mean? I'm just kind of waiting for the book to come out.
Yeah.
The movie.
You know that Dream Quest of Venet Bow?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah.
So when that comes out, maybe I'll make a comment about the book.
Well, it is out. You just have to find it.
Well, they haven't sent me my copy.
It's the Dream Quest of Unknown. What is the title of that book?
The Dream Quest of Venet Bow.
Oh, is
Yeah.
it? Okay. Good.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I know what you mean. Occasionally I see on Facebook people will allude to the fact that there's another round of one of the big discussions going on, and I just don't tune in anymore because
Yeah,
I've
I don't
heard
either, but
that people are going to make about that subject, you know, and they've already gone through it 6 months ago and a year ago and 18 months ago. So
I guess my point is, and maybe it's my imagination, and I don't want to dwell on it, but it seems to be happening in our community a little bit more often than it was perhaps 2 or 3 years ago, and I think we're better than that. You know, I don't think treating each other this way, it should just pass by as, okay, this is the new normal. So
I'm not sure I think it's the new normal. I think it's a couple of rabble-rousers. The people who make these comments are looking for a response. The majority of the community is, just like Sam was saying, you know, the fact that he was a little surprised that people were helpful only means that he didn't realize that all you have to do is ask generally in this community, and someone will tell you how they've done something or why they've done something. The reason that it's just not given to you is because most of us don't want to step on your toes while you're trying to do something.
yeah.
I think it's a very friendly and welcoming community for the most part. I think there are a couple of people on both ends of the spectrum that are a little unpleasant, but
Yeah, the problem, Kelly, I have is that I'm not sure how that spectrum falls out.
What do you mean?
I mean, it isn't. I don't know that it is a spectrum. You know, you would think that there should be, right? There should be a right and a left, but it doesn't. It doesn't seem to.
I'll tell you,
Can I make a snarky comment?
Sure.
as opposed
A
to
lot of us people actually work during the day, and we're very busy. Some people, I'm just saying, some people who are writers, they like. I think of Mike Griffin and his work ethic to writing, and when you finally get around to Facebook, you want to read something funny or what is so and so up to. You don't have time to publish a screed.
Yeah, I've
I
had the
wonder
same
about
thought
the
too, where
people
these
who are
guys
like
get the
so
time for this.
absorbed in publishing these screeds. It's because they aren't focused on writing what they should be.
Yeah, I've spoken to Mike about this too. A lot of these people I've decided to unfollow from my Facebook feed, and if that's the only way that I get information on what you're putting out next or who's publishing your stuff, I miss that. So you've now missed a sale
Right.
because what you normally want to talk about is bitching and moaning.
Right.
Yeah, it's very funny because when I sat down to start writing book reviews for various publications, one of the guys who guided me on that was David Hartwell, the editor at Tor. It was
Yeah.
very clear that if you want to write a bad review, you go ahead and write a bad review, but it has to be balanced. In fact, all the reviews have to be balanced. You can't just be gushing over head over heels in love with a book. You have to tell what's good and what's bad, and end up where you want to end up.
Okay, it's hard to take you seriously right now.
I know, I know.
Yeah, Pete
For those
is,
who can't see, Pete's dog is trying to take over the camera.
is your dog's name Falcor? Because he looks just like him from the head.
I think the dog
Funny
is
because he has this very specific look that I love, and then he goes to the groomer, and he comes back looking like Falcor. And it's just like I cry because I don't. It's not him, but he looks like Falcor, absolutely. So, but the reason I'm down on the floor hanging out with him is because he's actually very jealous of the laptop.
Ah.
So,
I
You
think
spend more time with a laptop.
because I spend a lot of time on the laptop typing, and if he comes up and he wants some attention, and
Yeah, Rick? Pretty
I
adorable.
think the dog is giving you a 100% positive review.
so
Well, the last thing I will say, and then let's move on, is that I wish that I wish that people could disagree and not get so pissed off. I mean, I'm constantly disappointed by that. Too much emotion has led into the conversation. So, you don't win the debate because you scream the loudest or because you've got the most righteous anger.
How do you win it then?
Well, if you're me, you just automatically assume that, like if I'm debating with you, just assume that I always win. So,
I would say that nobody wins on an internet debate, and
that's
maybe
true.
we should all take that into account.
I think that it actually plays into a lot of our instant response society, and it's what's happening at the higher levels of politics, is this lack of compromise and demonization of the other.
Right.
If
There's
you're
no middle ground whatsoever, yeah.
yeah.
So, I don't know. Did we? If we didn't, just briefly, the madness of Dr. Caligari, good-looking book here, edited by Joe Pulver with a lot of really great writers, and you can pre-order that at the Fedogan and Bremer website. I think it comes out on Halloween, but you can go ahead and pre-order it.
Are they issuing that as a paperback?
I think 2 editions, but don't quote me.
They're going to have a limited edition. It's not for sale. All I saw was a hardcover edition.
It must be, because I think it's like
They'll have a
$35
Kindle,
or
I
something.
think.
So, also speaking of Mr. Pulver, this is now out, Nightmare's Disciple, the new version with 3 afterwards, and you can order that on Amazon, published by Lovecraft eZine Press. If you order the paperback and you have a Kindle, you can get I've got it on the Kindle Matchbook program. You can get the Kindle edition for $1.99.
That's nice.
Yeah.
I love that. I wish every publisher would do that.
yeah, it's a good idea.
Yeah.
This is
So-
a comment on Joe.
Yeah.
In that book and other of his works, he does one of the greatest literary hoaxes that I've ever seen. He creates a fictional story by Lynn Carter that
Oh, right.
all of us went crazy trying to find on the internet. Where was this published? I mean, what this anthology he mentions?
Yeah.
So I was at Barnes & Noble yesterday and saw this, The Boys of Summer by Richard Cox. Never heard of Richard Cox. I think this is his 4th novel, and I'm almost finished with the book. I'm just riveted by this book, and I bring it up because this is basically a weird fiction story disguised as a horror novel or just a novel, and it's basically weird fiction on the shelf at Barnes and Noble. I don't want to talk too much about the plot of this book, but I'll read a little bit from the back and just say that I absolutely cannot say enough good things about this book. And apparently, this is a theme that the authors keeps revisiting, and I'm looking forward to reading his other books. Very Philip K. Dickian, very weird fiction in the sense that things are not as they seem, you know. In 1979, a massive tornado devastates the city of Wichita Falls, Texas, leaving scores dead, thousands homeless, and 9-year-old Todd Willis in a coma fighting for his life. It bounces between when he wakes up in 1983 and his 5 or 6 friends and the year 2008, and it's just really, really good. I guess that's really all I can say, except that if you like weird fiction, you really should buy this and read it. And I think also people who, it's not the same theme, but people who liked it, or what's that Robert R. McCammon book, Boy's Life, I think would very much like this book too.
Wow, yeah, you sold me with Boy's Life. How did you discover this? You're holding a physical copy, and I know you read a lot of Kindle stuff.
Well, I was at Barnes and Noble, and you know, the nice thing about being in an actual bookstore is you come across things that you wouldn't have come across otherwise, you know, browsing on Amazon possibly. And I just saw it on the, I think it was in New Fiction, but I can't remember if it had to be in, if Barnes & Noble had a horror section, it would have been in New Horror, but it was in New Science Fiction. So.
And you just read the blurb on the back and liked it, or?
I just read the blurb on the back and liked it. What I think sold me was this experience that this Todd kid has. 4 years later, Todd awakens to a world that looks the same, but feels different in a way he can't quite grasp. The new friends Todd makes in 1983 are fascinated with his experience, and they become mesmerized by his strange relationship with the world. The boys come of age during a dark, fiery summer where they find first love, betrayal, and a secret so terrible they agree never to speak of it again. Sounds very Lovecraftian, right? In 2008, when their memories of that childhood summer refuse to align with reality, the friends embark on a search for the truth that will threaten their lives and transform their understanding of each other and the world itself forever. So.
I'm looking forward to it. I think it's interesting that you still pick up the physical copies of books. The only books I pick up now that are physical are from my friends, and then I do hit Barnes & Noble every once in a while. If I see something I like, I take a picture of it and I go to Amazon and download it.
Well, first of all, it's not available until I think the 6th. So, you know, online, either the Kindle copy or even you have to pre-order it right now. So that I did look it up, and that was one reason.
Okay.
Second reason is I don't really get to Barnes & Noble very often, maybe twice a year. because it's not it's an hour away. And the third thing is, yes, my wife discourages me getting physical copies of books too, because I have so many and we're running out of space. But there's themes, Philip K. Dick themes, Lovecraftian themes, weird fiction themes. I just think anyone who's interested in Philip K. Dick or Lovecraft or weird fiction in general really should read this book. I just really like it.
I put it on my list.
So, you were sold when I said 1983. Admit it.
Well, I do love the 80s, but as soon as you mentioned Boy's Life, I really am interested now.
Don't get me wrong; it's a very different book from Boy's Life. They're not, but sort of the coming of age theme, and it reminded me. And that's one of my favorite books, Boy's Life.
Mine too.
So, all right, we have anything else? Okay,
I don't think I do.
Take that as a resounding no. Who do we have next week? We have, hang on, Ellen Datlow.
Whoa!
Cool.
Yeah.
She's in my neighborhood right now.
Yeah, she is. What's she doing?
She's visiting her mother.
Oh, okay.
So I should drop her a line.
And then on September the 18th, Matthew Bartlett. And don't forget about October 1st. We've got a special Halloween show at a special time and day. October the 1st at 10 p.m. Eastern, which is a Saturday. Scott Thomas and Jeff Thomas, they're joining us for our annual Halloween episode, and you guys are obviously welcome too.
I will spend the entire time just bowing before Scott Thomas and telling him how much I love the Sea of Ash.
Well, time to get to work on the sequel then.
I'll do it.
So, all right, well.
Remember the prizes.
Yeah, all right, thanks. The prizes were Weirder Shadows over Innsmouth, wasn't it? Courtesy of Fedogan and Bremer. We got 2 copies to give away. So if you want one of those, I choose the winners randomly, and just send an email to lovecraftezine.prizes@gmail.com and put the book title in the subject. So thanks, guys, and thanks everybody for watching and for listening, and we'll see you next week.